Pyukumuku, the sea cucumber Pokemon. What an odd designation for a Pokemon that's otherwise so unique. It's the only Pokemon that can learn Purify, the only Pokemon with the ability Innards Out. And it can even punch you if you touch it, by spitting out all its organs. But how about the fact that it has one of the most unique competitive singles history in all of competitive Pokemon, with the only Pokemon that even closely resembling it being Quagsire. Join me as we explore that competitive history in this overview of Pyukumuku. And in this video we'll be covering these competitive formats. Pyukumuku is completely unviable in most doubles formats, because its stally strategies simply do not work in a more faster, offensively minded environment. It will get overwhelmed incredibly quickly, especially since Block and Toxic simply do not work as well when there are two Pokemon on the field. And when you're sacrificing one of your Pokemon to use for Pyukumuku, most would think there would be a good reason for it, but Pyukumuku simply does not have the tools at all to deal with any Pokemon in doubles. It's going to get killed incredibly quickly, and probably deal a minuscule amount of chip damage. Not to mention the fact that it is incredibly slow, and will probably not get anything done at all. Now, on to the rest of the video. Pyukumuku is a defensive water type, plain and simple. 130 in both defenses, 55 HP, and a water typing. All of this is standard and is proven to work by Pokemon such as Milotic and Suicune. Along with the fact that it is unaware, it allows it to ignore all of the opposing Pokemon status changes. For example, let's say that we have a Salamence that Dragon Danced 6 times. Pyukumuku would act as if that Salamence didn't get a single Dragon Dance at all. So 1 times the damage for every single move. However, despite all of these great traits, it can't be helped in most cases because Pyukumuku is one of the most predictable Pokemon of all time. Magic Bounce or Magic Guard pretty much make it so that Pyukumuku can't do anything out of the fact that it runs pretty much only status and recovery moves. Taunt and Substitute similarly render it useless, and Toxic Immune Pokemon simply just do not take anything from Pyukumuku's Toxics. Grass and Electric types along with really heavy offense can often just break through it, whereas Pokemon with Photon Geyser or Mold Breaker can simply ignore unaware. Toxic or other residual damage also heavily damages Pyukumuku, and some Pokemon that just can't be trapped such as Ghost or U-Turn and Volt Switch users just walk over Pyukumuku all the time. From this, we can gather that it only fits on stall teams. No other team can suffer the loss of momentum without completely folding from that point onwards. As you can see, it has no offensive pressure whatsoever. That attack stat is absolutely pathetic. On stall teams, if they need to answer a very specific set of Pokemon, they either have to go with Pyukumuku or Quagsire. And considering that Quagsire is underused borderline, and that Clefable is straight up OU, and that all the other unaware Pokemon such as Swoobat and Beedrill are way too frail, Pyukumuku ends up being the only option that you can use. So, what do we have? It has very low usage, because there's only a very specific niche on a specific team that can use its talents. If you're not using that team, you're not using it. And if you don't need its talents, you're not using it. So, it's actually untiered in Generation 7. But it has niches in all of PU, NU, RU, UU, and OU. In all the under OU tiers, Quagsire, of course, is banned. So, what that means is that Pyukumuku has free reign to do what it wants in annoying the opponent. And in OU, it still has a small niche, although it's mostly outclassed by Quagsire. True to being a sea cucumber stuck in a single place, Pyukumuku does the same thing in all of its tiers, with very minor variations. The basic moveset is 4 of these moves. Block, which is mandatory, Toxic or Spite, Recover, which is mandatory, Soak, Rest, and Taunt. Block prevents the opposing Pokemon from switching out. Toxic renders a lot of Pokemon on a timer because they have to constantly keep taking toxic damage. Spite removes PP from the opposing Pokemon's last used move, 4 PP to be precise. Recover recovers HP, Rest does the same, and Soak turns a Pokemon into a water type, and Taunt prevents them from using any status moves. Taunt prevents Pokemon from just setting up like Stealth Rock or Spikes or other entry hazards until they die in front of Pyukumuku, and Soak allows Pyukumuku to Toxic anything, alongside the fact that it removes stab bonuses from other moves. The most basic strategy is to switch up on a setup or non-threatening Pokemon that Pyukumuku can defeat, block it, and annoy it until it dies. This is one of the most obnoxious sets in all of Pokemon, as it relies on the opposing Pokemon being helpless as they die from struggle recoil or toxic damage. The ideal situation is this. Step 1. Switch on the target and use block so they can't switch. Step 2. Toxic or Spite until you need to heal. Step 3. Recover or Rest as needed. Step 4. Switch out as the opponent will feint to struggle recoil or toxic damage and use Pyukumuku later if needed. If your moveset has any other moves, use them as necessary. As the tiers increase, Pyukumuku becomes weaker and more exploitable, generally, but almost always does the exact same thing. There are some variations, and here they are. Pyukumuku can use Z moves, with the Poison Z move raising its defense by 1 stage to become even more obnoxious, or the Ghost Z move to recover all your HP. But other Pyukumukus will always use leftovers because other teammates will be able to use the Z move better. It always maxes its HP EVs, and then either maxes special or physical defense based on what the team would want to defeat most. So many Pokemon get checked or countered by Pyukumuku, such as Omastar and Snorlax, while others such as Scizor would render it completely useless because they have U-turn. In OU, it's difficult to justify it because Quagsire and Clefable are great unaware users, and Pyukumuku's higher bulk isn't always worth it. But every stall team in each of these tiers has to at least consider using it. Its viability in each of these tiers varies quite a bit. In PU, it's C- tier. There are a lot of grass types, such as Torterra in S tier, or A tier or B tier, which pretty much renders Pyukumuku very difficult to use. It's not even listed as viable on NU, because Xatu is an A tier and Rotom Cut is an S- tier. Xatu has Magic Bounce, which just hard counters it, and Rotom Cut is absolutely not a Pokemon you can wall Pyukumuku. It's actually C+ tier in RU, thanks to the amount of Pokemon that it answers very well. And in UU, it's actually C- tier. It's not listed in OU, but what this means is that it is better in RU than it is in NU, and better in PU than it is in NU. Take that with what you will. It is a very strange Pokemon with very strange viability. So the Sword and Shield metagame is still developing, and unfortunately it isn't really viable anywhere except in ZU and PU, both of which it is C tier. It's always doing the same thing. Block, Spite, Toxic, Recover. It has established itself as a stall staple. That isn't quite as good, but the metagame is still developing, so who knows. So how good was it actually? I don't know. Thanks for watching. Check out False Swipe Gaming in the comment below. And of course, I will be gaming.